Hey babe, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Treasure, your favorite mental health influencer. This is episode 1 of Depression Decoded. If you missed my last video, I gave the full explanation on what this series will entail, so make sure you check that out and I will leave a link here for you. Today's topic, we are talking about how to spot signs of depression before being depressed. So if you're interested in today's video, then keep on watching, but don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any videos. Now let's get into it, babe. So how do you spot signs of depression? This can be really hard because some of the signs of depression are so sneaky and you don't even realize that they are warning signs, because some of them are kind of like things that you would just experience if you're just having a bad day. But to understand that they could be possible signs of depression versus just I'm having a bad day today, they are going to be persistent symptoms. So number 1 is persistent sadness. Are you feeling sad more than often, or are you crying what seems to be for no reason? So for me personally, I experienced this 1 year before actually understanding and knowing that I was depressed. I would drive to work every single day and just be bawling my eyes out. But there was nothing for me to really pinpoint and understand what I was crying for, because what seemed to me, my life was okay, I'm working, I have a good job, my life was fine. I didn't understand why I was crying, so I did a lot of like pushing the feelings down and being like, you're okay, move on, like get over it. And eventually the signs stopped of me crying, but it's not that they necessarily stopped, more as things just ended up getting worse. And by the time I noticed that I was actually depressed, I was way deep in it. So that is one thing that you really want to pay attention to for your moods. If you are someone who is generally happy all the time and all of a sudden you just feel sad or you're crying more often than you normally would, this could be a sign of depression. Number 2, changes in your sleep pattern. If you are sleeping too much or you're not sleeping at all. Again, my personal experience, I went from sleeping as hard as a rock, like literally people would struggle to wake me up out of my sleep, to not sleeping at all. And that was really hard for me. Imagine going through probably about 3 years of no sleep. Like I would get maybe 1 to 2 hours of sleep a day. How I was functioning, I genuinely have no idea, because when I went to see therapists and psychiatrists, they didn't understand how is it that I was still like walking and functioning for the most part, because it's supposed to be impossible for you to function without enough sleep, and I for sure was not getting enough sleep. So pay attention to your sleeping patterns. If you are starting to sleep way more than you usually do, or if you're starting to sleep way less than you usually do and it's more of a consistent thing, this could also be a sign of an onset of depression, or if you may already be depressed. Number 3, difficulty concentrating. Are you feeling like your brain is like moving from one thing to another and you can't focus on any one thing? Me personally, I feel like I'm always scatterbrained, like my brain is always moving all over the place. But I think the difference from it being a sign of depression is you kind of get anxious of when you feel like you can't focus on anything. I was going from one thought to the next thought to the next thought to the next thought, and I wasn't completing any of my thoughts, and it gave me so much intense anxiety because I couldn't focus. And on things that I would normally be able to like hone in on and be okay, like get it together, focus on this, finish it, move on to the next thing, I couldn't focus on anything. I was all over the place. So maybe this would be a more clear sign to someone. If you're someone who generally is able to concentrate really well, and then all of a sudden you feel like you can't concentrate on anything and you're just continuously losing focus, this would be a very clear sign to you that you could be either heading into depression or if you are already depressed. This specific one is a little bit harder to notice if you're someone who's already scatterbrained like me. That wasn't a very clear sign to me that this was a sign of me being depressed, because I always felt that way. It got more intense, and I think once I noticed the other signs, then I realized like, oh, okay, this is the difference between how I'm normally scatterbrained and how I am while being depressed. So that's also something that you can pay attention to and really determine, like, is this something that I already feel just on a daily basis and nothing is wrong with me? Is it more intense? That would be the indication. Or if you're someone who is always focused and always concentrating and now all of a sudden you can't, then that would be a very clear sign to you that something is a little bit off. Number 4, having anxiety and feeling restless. If you feel like you are just super anxious all the time, this is a clear sign of possibly being depressed. You can have anxiety and be depressed at the same time. They are not one and the same, and you don't have to have both, but it is possible for you to have anxiety and for you to be depressed. Me personally, this was my experience. I am not sure if I necessarily, well, actually I do know. I know that I didn't just get anxiety from depression. I've always had anxiety, like my whole life I've always had anxiety. It just was not as intense as it was during my depression. And another thing to note, that your depression can trigger your anxiety and vice versa. Your anxiety can trigger your depression. So that is something to pay attention to. If you're someone who already experiences anxiety on a day-to-day basis and you're not depressed, that can be something that will intensify if you become depressed, or as a sign of depression, if you feel like your anxiety is getting worse or it's worse than what it usually is, then that could be a sign of possible depression. If you're someone who already experiences anxiety. If you are not someone who has anxiety or has ever experienced anxiety, it will be a clear sign that possibly you could be, depressed or going into depression, because you're not usually anxious and all of a sudden you are having anxiety and feeling anxious about everything. That could be something for you to pay attention to. Number 5 is your appetite. Are you eating too much or eating not enough? I love to eat. Like, I enjoy food. I love trying new things. Not too crazy, but I love to enjoy food and, eat. During my depression, I did not eat. I didn't want to look at food. I didn't want to smell food. I didn't want to cook. Just food was not something that I was thinking about. So for me, that was a clear sign that something is wrong, because I love to eat and all of a sudden I don't want to touch anything. There would be plenty days where I had to force myself to eat one piece of something because I just wasn't eating. And that was my personal experience, that I went from loving to eat to absolutely I don't want to eat anything. However, I did realize that as I was coming out of depression, my anxiety triggered me to eat more than I would normally. So when I'm feeling anxious or when I'm feeling like I'm, having an anxiety attack, sometimes, not all the time, but some of them will trigger me to just eat things. So that's also something to pay attention to. I'm not sure, I'm not a doctor. I don't know if the two are linked or not, but me personally, depression made me not want to eat anything, but there are occasions where when I'm feeling very anxious or I'm having anxiety, I will eat more than what I would normally. So something for you to pay attention to as a sign of depression is your appetite changes. Are you going from not eating at all to now you want to eat everything, or usually eat everything and now you don't want to eat anything? Drastic changes in your appetite is something to pay attention to. Number 6 is loss of interest in hobbies or things that you like to do. With me, I lost interest in everything. I didn't want to do a single thing. It didn't matter what it was. As coping mechanisms, while I was depressed, I tried to do the things that I knew that I previously liked to do. It didn't work for me just because I just lost interest in everything, so I couldn't really stick to anything. I wasn't able to use those as coping mechanisms. But it could be a sign of depression if you are losing interest in things that you know that you usually like to do. Then it could be either you're depressed or you're in onset depression. So pay attention to your loss of interest in hobbies or things that you enjoy. Number 7 can be physical symptoms. Are you feeling pains in your body that you don't normally, or are you having digestive problems? For me, I'm not so sure that I necessarily had this as a symptom per se, just because I've always had stomach issues. Since I was a baby, I've had stomach issues, so I couldn't really use that as a sign of, I'm having digestive issues. So, maybe that's a sign of depression, as well as like pain in my body. Something is always bothering me, so that's not something that I could use as a sign or an indicator that, maybe this is depression. But if you're someone who you feel like you're normally healthy and all of a sudden you are having, problems with your body, whether it be pain that you're feeling or, stomach issues, then that could be a sign that you are either onset depression or you are already depressed. Last but not least is changes in your routine. Are you either not sticking to your routine? Are you making excuses for reasons why you can't keep your plans? This is something that will be a drastic change in what you normally do. Now, I'm sure we all have those, moments, or maybe you're just the kind of person where you make plans with people and then by the time the plans come, you're like, oh, I really don't feel like going. I don't want to go out. I want to stay in the bed. I want to, put on a little cozy pajama, cozy outfit and just chill. That could just be a personality thing. This is something that is going to be drastically different from what you already do. So me personally, I'm not someone who likes to go out per se. I don't just want to be out partying all the time. I have my moments where, I want to go out and I want to have fun and enjoy, other people's company. But generally, I'm a homebody. So the way that I was able to use this as a indicator of, okay, something's off, something's not right, and that it was that I was depressed, was really for work with me, because when I'm, working and I have a job, I am like always going above and beyond, doing more than whatever my duties are. Like I am going out of my way for people. And I found myself making countless excuses of why I couldn't do that anymore. I couldn't do my own job correctly. I couldn't, do things for other people. Like I was calling off from work. It's also not something that I did. I could be sick and I'd still be going into work. I know you're not supposed to do that, but I always went above and beyond. And so when I found myself making excuses for why I couldn't do things where work was concerned, that to me was like a clear sign that something isn't right. And I want to say, if my memory serves me correct, that was the thing that really pushed me over to really sit down and acknowledge, like, okay, something isn't right. Because as I've said before, I was in denial for a long time that I was depressed. If you ask anyone, I'm not depressed, I'm fine, nothing is wrong with me. But I think once I realized that I was making excuse after excuse after excuse of why I couldn't show up to work or why I couldn't do my job, I think that was what let me know, like, okay, something is not right, something's off, maybe you are genuinely depressed, I want to say that that was my sign, especially because this happened during COVID. And at this time, we were all in the house anyway. I was working from home, so it wasn't like I had to get up and leave and, go into work. And the way that my, job was set up at the time for, COVID work from home, it was like the easiest job that I think I could have done, and I was still making excuses of why I couldn't, do things or get things done. So I think too that probably was a really big, red flag of something's not right. So pay attention to any drastic changes in your behavior when it comes to your routine, whether it's work, whether maybe you are someone who loves to go out and hang out and all of a sudden you're canceling plans and you don't want to be outside anymore. That would be a clear sign of something is off, something's not right, something to pay attention to. So these are just a few signs. I want to say, in my opinion, the top 8 sneaky signs of depression. So make sure that you're paying attention to how you're moving on your day-to-day, because symptoms of depression can really sneak up on you, and not all the time are they very clear signs of depression. As you can see after I've explained some of them to you, some of them can just be hey, I'm not having a good day today, I don't want to go out. And that's fine, nothing is wrong with you, you are okay. But if it's something that's consistently happening, it can be a sign of depression. That's why I feel it's super important to pay attention to your daily habits, and to also note that because these signs can coincide with just I'm not having a good day today, they are going to be drastically different from what you normally do. It's not going to be like a subtle change as a sign of depression or onset depression. It is going to be a complete 180 of who you are as a person. So that's how you want to pay attention to the signs. Am I being drastically different on the other side of the spectrum than what I am normally? So I hope that this video was very helpful and that you take note of all of these signs and pay attention to your body, your moods, and really make sure that you are understanding who you are as a person and knowing when something is off and when you need to regroup and take note of really what's going on with you, in aiding and helping you take care of your mental health. So that is the end of today's episode. Make sure you comment below, let me know what you think, and let me know if you think you have any of these signs of depression. If you know any signs that I didn't talk about, make sure you also leave them in the comments. I want to talk to you, I want to know what you're going through, share your stories, and really just build a community with you. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. May your day be filled with self-love, kindness towards yourself, and remember that your mental health matters, babe.